like in Hawaii, or if you live, somewhere that's not a seasonal type of place, like at the beach or whatnot. But if you live anywhere that's kind of like, a northern latitude, then you start to get a little bit of a feeling of what the seasonality causes. And one of the thoughts that I always have and I always think back on are some of the old great teachings from Jim Rohn. And Jim Rohn always would talk about how, the same wind blows on us all. And he would always talk about how the winds of change, the winds of economic challenge, the winds of seasonal change, and the laws, the same laws of, in this particular case, the one that I'm always thinking about is the laws of sowing and reaping. And I think that it's just so crucial that we can draw observations from things that are happening around us, such as nature. Whereas you see, the four seasons, for example, you have springtime, which is a time of blossom and a time of bloom and a time of hope and possibility. And then you have summer, which is a time of gestation. And then you have the fall, which is a time of harvest typically. And then it's also a time of preparation and kind of consolidation. So there's a couple of different messages to kind of learn from within that, embedded within that very lesson. As we watch it happen in the seasons, we also have to watch it happen in our own particular life. And we can draw inspiration and we can use some of these things that we learn from nature to then apply to our business. So tonight, what we're really going to talk about is basically both the fall and then of course winter and spring. And what does that actually mean? So sometimes you have the harvest, and one of the experiences that we tend to have unanimously as entrepreneurs and as people is we tend to want to skip the 3 seasons and go straight to the harvest. So, I mean, say if you've ever wanted to just get to the result, say if you ever wanted to just take a product and achieve your weight loss goal, say if you ever wanted to just, wake up and have a fat bank account. I know I certainly have. And what we have to understand is that, of course, if you sow a good seed, of course, if you, water the seed, if you then, sow the seed and you continue to work the seed and eventually grow, then you will, and of course, have a good bounty. You will have a good harvest. But for us to want to force the harvest is one of the principal causes of frustration as an entrepreneur. So as you're thinking about that and you're recognizing like, okay, wherever you are today in your money, in your life, in your business, in your dreams, it's where you are today. It is what it is. I'm where I am. Kevin is where he is, and that's for better or for worse, right? And most of us, in most cases in our lives, will find that we are both, grateful for where we are and also eager or frustrated for where we're not or where we want to be, right? And so in this time, of course, of harvest, and now as we're kind of transitioning into winter, you can think to yourself, okay, whether or not I had the bounty, whether or not I had the harvest that I wanted right now, if I was to change what's going on in my world, what would I have this harvest look like at a later date? What if I had to go through the seasons again and I had to, sow the seed and I had to cultivate and work the bounty and then eventually get to the harvest again? How would I have that? What would that actually look like? Because then from there, you can start to use the next season, which is the season of winter, to go internal and to think to yourself, okay, like, what have I done good? Have I stockpiled for winter? Have I prepared for winter? Am I prepared to endure a cold winter? And this can mean so many different things. It can be the simplicity of simply just, like if you live on a farm, making sure that everything is harvested and canned. If you're in, America today, it can mean that, you prepared yourself financially for the challenges that we're all facing, for the inflation, for, the slowdown economically that may or may not be before us. And then one more step beyond that, of course, is that there's always the season of spring, which is when you start to plant, you start to sow, and you start to go out and you start to sow a good seed so that you can have a great harvest again in the future. Now, why do I explain all of this? Because if you're an entrepreneur and you're watching this today, you don't have to wait for autumn and for winter and for spring. You may be in any one of those seasons, and naturally entrepreneurs have to experience those different seasons, but you can choose when you're ready to go from autumn into winter and into spring. And then whatever your goals are, whatever you did right, whatever you did wrong, whatever you want to do better, you now can take that data, you can take that information that you've learned, that you've gathered, and you can make a plan to sow a good seed, to sow more of a seed, to plant basically more soil. And what does that actually mean if you're going to use a business like Active to change that landscape, to change that bounty, to change that income, to change that lifestyle? It's you're going to go out and you're going to put the time and the energy into inviting and sowing and inviting and sowing and inviting and sowing and figuring out where you're going to find fertile soil. So what do I mean by that? When you're out sowing a seed, the great analogy always is that you might cast a good seed. You might know that you have a pure seed that you're out there planting, but not every single seed that you plant is going to germinate. Some are going to fall on rocky soil. Some are going to actually, start to bloom and germinate, and then they're going to wither in the sun, and some are going to actually become a fruitful harvest. And so the analogy is that at some point, no matter what you want to do, no matter where you are today, if you have hope for a bigger bounty later, you're going to have to go through the process of sowing a good seed in this business, which is ultimately figuring out an effective way to share the product, to share the message, and to find the people that want to be your customers, find the people that want to be influencers and that want to grow something. And the reason that I tell that story is because Kevin's been out on a 4,000-mile road trip. He's been going across the country. And as he's been doing that, he's been sending me videos of different people sampling the product. He's been sending me video of strangers, taking a giant 1-gallon jug of active greens and anticipating that it's going to taste like borophyll, and then it turns out tasting incredible. And he's sending me these testimonials in real time. And so what Kevin's doing right now is he's saying, okay, I've had a whole season. We've been in business for a year. We've had some wins. We've had some losses. We've made some commissions. We've had some growth. We've had some, departures. And he's saying, I want an even bigger, better outcome. And so he's sowing the seed. And so we thought it'd be a really wonderful time tonight to just have an open conversation about what those conversations look like, what you're saying, what's been working, how people have been responding, what you've been pointing them towards, and kind of what that strategy is as far as figuring out really the best practices for sharing active so that, next fall can be a plentiful bounty. So Kev, if that's a good intro, have at it.
Oh man, that is such a good intro. So I thought to myself, I was leaving. I had this internal moment. I'm going on this crazy road trip. I'll be gone. It is really 4,500 miles of driving. And I started thinking like, man, I wonder who needs to get an opportunity, who needs the product. And I thought to myself, how much provision wise do I need to take? I was like, I'll bring 3 bags. It's like, oh, that if they sit in the car, they go bad faster. They're not as good longer. So I was like, well, if you bring 3 bags, you got to share 3 bags. So first thing was burn the boats. 3 bags. You said, okay, test strips. I was like, well, I'm going to grab 22 packs of test strips. I will test 22 people. So, or double if there's doubles there, depending on the situation. So that was the setup. And then I have 3 little kids on the road trip with me, and I'm like giving them the coming of age thing. So a lot of people going to the bathroom, a lot of stops. Figure I'll start the same conversation with a question. And so it's like, hey, how are you doing today? And they say, oh, good, or whatever the answer is. And I look them in the eyes and say, no, I'm like serious. Like, how are you doing? And then they give me an honest answer. And I ask them why. And they say why. And then I pause. And then they asked me back, hey, well, how's your day? I'm like, oh, man, I'm doing great. I'm driving across the country. I said, by chance, you wouldn't happen to know anyone who has like a big social media following or is an influencer type of person? Do you know anybody like that? And every single person they asked that question to said yes. Every single person said yes. And then my answer was to interrupt myself more excited. And I said, oh my gosh, you're sitting on a gold mine. I said, I'm working with a guy who's putting a company together. And they were figuring the best way to launch this company was to find influencers, people with big social media followings, or people that knew a lot of people in real life and wanted to do kind of the same thing. Do you know people like that? They said, yeah. I said, man, you could make a lot of money. How's your money right now? And then I just wait. And they're like, they tell me whatever they tell me. And it's kind of the same thing. It's like, no matter what, life happens, you get paid, you allocate the money and you have none. Or you only have the little bit until the next time you get paid. Some variation of that answer. And then I'm like, well, I don't know if this would be for you. I said, but they want us diseased and dumb and dependent, and they don't want us to know anything. And people are like shaking their heads. And I said, I think I found a way to help the world while committing an act of rebellion against the man. Are you interested? And they're like, what is it? And I'm like, I'm glad you asked. Let me be right back. And I go to my car, or in some cases I was like, well, follow me. and I'll grab you some samples. Or like, samples for what? And then I start in. I'm like, so I'm from Utah. I said I tell them the story of the soil all fast and the volcanic mineral rich soil out in Utah, and we're bringing that to the world. You think a third world country doesn't have the same ability to get all this nutrition? I was like, I just wanted to simplify nutrition, and I think I found a way, and it's cheaper. And I asked them, do you know about athletic greens? And most people said yes. I said, we're half the price, and it pays 50% every time they buy. You should see people's eyes. They were blown away. And I said, imagine making a little override because of the influencer person you know and all of the sales they do. And not one person out of, gosh, how many people have I talked to? Maybe 15 or 16 people. Not one person had said or gave resistance or said anything related to networking. Most people agreed with me that that is the best way today to launch a brand. And I said, would you like to get a piece of the action? And then I was very quick to get their phone number, and I sent them the video about what if there was a product that could like make $300 a month by helping people video on the YouTube channel. I sent them the product video. That's like the volcanic soil one. I sent them my link. I sent them a coupon code, and I started testing people's levels at that point, because I'd start in after talking about the soil. I'd talk about nitric oxide a little bit, and people were very, very receptive. I've been in 7 different states so far. And in those states, the culture of the people's different, but the common thread was that everybody needs opportunity and needs to be more healthy. And there was genuine excitement. There were 2 people that I met on this trip. One guy, I walked past him. His wife was like smoking out front of the hotel, and he had a presence and he had light in his eyes. And I wanted to say something. And I recognized him because he had really big calves. And I thought, man, this guy's calves are really big. I should tell him he's got great calves, but he's probably going to think I'm a weirdo. And then I walked past and I didn't say anything. The next morning, I'm there down at the lobby, and they're doing their continental breakfast, and I see the guy eating breakfast by himself. And I was like, I'm going to go talk to him. That's always awkward for me, always awkward for me. And I went and I was like, hey, man, I saw you last night out front when I got here, and I thought, you guys got a present. Like, I wonder, I was like, I should say something, because when they put masks on us, you just couldn't say anything. So I was like, if they ever go do away with that culturally, if I see it, I'll say it. So I saw it. I want to say it. I was like, you had great calves. I thought that guy's got good calves. And on top of it, I thought you had a great presence. I just want to tell you that. And he's like, thanks, man. That made my day. And that was how I started the conversation. So we get into talking, and he's there in town because his kid has a karate tournament. We start talking. He's a mechanic. He has a shop. And he lives maybe like 5 hours south of where we are. And we're talking, and he's like, yeah, man, I've made money. I've lost money. He starts talking about how family is the most important. I agree with him. He sees my kids. We're talking briefly, and he talks about how he's going to inherit a farm from his dad that's worth like all this money and has all this land. And I like look at him, and he looks at me, and we had a moment, and he told me that if he didn't succeed in life before he inherited the farm, that it would haunt him for the rest of his life. And then he tells me he used to have a Lamborghini. He's made millions of dollars before. He's lost millions of dollars before, and he's looking for his next opportunity. I start talking to him about this. The way that I began it was, I was like, man, I don't know if this is for you, but everything happens for a reason. And I'm working with a guy who's starting a company, and he's a very successful friend of mine, and he has massive buying power. And he's looking for a couple people that know the right people. And do you know any people that have huge followings, are big on social media, are the influencer type? He's like, I guess I am. And he proceeds to tell me he has like 100,000 followers, and he gets like 2, 3, 400,000 views or likes every time he posts something. And he's like, what is it? So I went and I got him samples. He was so excited about it. He's like, sign me up. He's like, what do I have to do to get started? And he was so jacked up about it. And he asked me for my number. He was persistent. He followed me to my car. And Peyton and I joke all the time with astrology stuff and things. And I was like, man, all you need is a couple Taurus men because that personality is like a bull in a china shop and just understands. Like, they don't take no for an answer. They just understand all I got to do is go 3 by 3. And they like blinders on. They just go 3x3 and then they make money. And then the story is like, I went 3x3, I made some money, and then I did it again, I made some more money, and then they just kept paying me. And I've seen that personality join a matrix over and over and over, and their story is literally that simple. Anytime anybody asks them a question, they're like, I don't know about all that. What I do know is I went 3x3, helped a couple people go 3x3, got some customers along the way, and now I'm making money. And there's always one of those in every one of those companies, and it's a similar personality. This guy's personality was that he writes me on Facebook, excited, wanting to get started. There was some girls in a college town I talked to that knew a bunch of influencers, and they were influencers themselves. It happened in a juice shop, and I was like, "You want to try my juice?" And then ended up giving everybody in the store test strips and juice, got everybody excited. They were posting it on their social medias, and they're not even in this company yet. And so I've been collecting phone numbers, and I'm only like a portion of the trip, and I'm already through a bag of product, and I was only given like 2 sticks a person. But I had this epiphany. I thought, if it's a numbers game, like, I've lost my voice because I've talked to so many people in the last few days. My kids are like, oh, there he goes again. I'm trying to write off stuff. My kids are helping me in the conversation. What an example of them seeing their dad recruiting. But to me, the goal here is, if this was your company, any of you watching this right now, if this was your company and you were Dan and you had stake in it and it was yours, and every single one of you that's on this call are different than everyone else in this company because you're still here, because you have a level of commitment, because you honor your word, you have a level of what is the word I'm looking for, leadership, that people don't have. You have stake in the company. If you continue on auto ship to year 3, then you're part owner in that sense, overriding on the total sales of the company. That's a huge benefit. You're all different than everybody else because you have that in common. But if this was your company, you would have to talk to a ton of people to launch it. And the way that people launch companies today is they go get a few influencers online, and then they spend a ton of money on marketing. That's why I love this model, because instead of spending a bunch of money on marketing, they just pay people commission instead when we do the marketing. So I would ask you that question. If it was your company and before you said, I want to make $100,000 a month. And if hypothetically I made $1 a month from each order, I would need 100,000 people. And if that was the case, that seems so daunting. But if 3 get 3, who get 3, who get 3, it does it a few times. A couple people join that go nuts with it, and it continues to move forward. And sure enough, in a little while, 5 becomes 10, 10 becomes 1,000, 1,000 becomes 10,000, and 10,000 people each go get one person, and you got 20,000 people. If 20,000 people, you get 200 of those people to go to a convention, those 200 people will be there the next year. They'll each go recruit a couple, and 200 will bring 600. 600 will bring an additional 3. All of a sudden, you get 1,800 new people joining, and it just continues to spiral. This aspect of the business is built on faith, because once you decide it, the people that end up joining the business and blowing it up are never people you know when you get started. So you have to make the decision, move forward in faith. But if this was my company, there's a thought, and this is the thought, and I'd love to leave you with this thought. There's a daunting thing if this was your company where you're like, I need 100,000 people to buy this. I've only talked to like 30 or 50. I've only talked to 200 or 300. I've only talked to 500 people. I am nowhere near where I would need to be. I'm in Chicago, Illinois right now, and there are so many people here from so many different countries. There are so many cultures here. There are so many restaurants here. It is such a dense population here. And I'm like, we haven't talked to like a fraction of the people where we live or that we know by comparison to the people in this populace. It's your business, you know? It's like, it's the aspect of like, if you wanted to succeed, what would you be willing to do? How many people would you be willing to talk to? I thought, if I talk to people everywhere I go, I can write everything off. And this is going to be a long, probably expensive trip. So I wanted to write it all off. Then I realized I didn't want the product to go bad. It's sitting in a hot car, so I need to give it away to people. And then I'm the moment I start reaching out to people and it's going well, it just becomes easier and easier and easier. And like I'm probably closer to 30 different conversations that I've had in what, 4 or 5 days. I don't know how long I've been out, but I'll be gone for another 2.5 weeks, and I'm gonna continue on and on and on with the product because I'm like, I'll never see these people again. I'm somewhere I'm not gonna be for a long time. What do I have to lose? And I potentially have everything to gain. And statistically, out of like somewhere between 20 and 30 people I've talked to, there are two phenomenal prospects that are very interested. The conversation is carrying on. They are leading the conversation and reaching out to me with questions. One of them has been a millionaire before. Both of them have hundreds of thousands of followers online. So you have to ask the right questions, but you got to open your mouth. If you're scared to reach out to people, then you don't care. You don't care about yourself. You don't care about your goals, but most of all, you don't care about other people because this isn't about you. This is about them. And you don't know where they're at. I talked to a guy who was on the edge of his life. He seemed, the energy I'd describe as despair. He seemed like despair and a heaviness with it. And I was like, hey man, how are you doing today? And he's like, just another day. And he had like such an attitude of like defeat. And I was talking to him and I was like, man, you forgot. Like, and I come to find out he's from North Korea. And he became an immigrant and came here because I guess this is a sanctuary city. And he came here and he's like, my life has always been hard. And his whole thing is like, he's like, what's the point? There's no point. And he like lost hope. One conversation, he has hope again. He's excited and he believes he could make money with the greens. He believes he can make money doing other things, but that he has options. It's like the hardest part's over. It could be different. And I think if I just kind of getting his energy, I thought, hey, this could be a draining conversation. I kind of just want to go to my room, and I engaged. And engaging with that guy might have changed his life, but that guy needed that. And if I wasn't willing to do the thing, who knows what part I played in his journey. But there's people out there that are on their knees praying for something. They call it a silent depression. I feel it everywhere. I know you feel it everywhere. People need something right now, whether it's money, whether it's opportunity, whether it's hope. And you have something that's not like the others. But if you don't share it with anybody, it's no good for you and it won't do you any good. And so it's like you've got to get out of your own way and reach out to people. I'm grateful and lucky that it's a bunch of people I'll never see again. And I'm like, what do I got to lose? Let's go. And I've lost my voice from talking to people about this, but I have done better in the last 4 or 5 days than I have in the last 4 or 5 months in terms of recruiting. And I think it's daunting, but I probably need to talk to hundreds more people on a monthly basis than I'm talking to now if I want this brand to go and if I want the goals that I want. And so I'd ask you for you, what goals you want? How many people are you talking to regularly? We can all say, oh, we need this, we need that, we need this video, we need that, we need the onboarding, we need this, we need that. I signed up a guy consistently every week now since we had that call about 4 weeks ago about onboarding. And I've made a point to get excited about the onboarding meeting that we would have. And watching somebody feel like their business just got started when you're giving them a hug and leaving their house or wherever you met because they've been onboarded and they know what to do. They know where everything is. It's exciting. It's like, it's as simple as doing the recruiting, doing the onboarding, helping them get their first 3, have their first party, have their first few 3-way calls, share their first videos, get their first few customers, and then moving on to the next person, moving on to the next person. And the ones that are willing to do the work will do the work, and the ones that won't, we can't push a rope. In leadership, they say you can't push a rope, but you can pull a rope everywhere. So to lead by example isn't to push people that are in front of you like you're on a hike and you're pushing them up the hill. That's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to run your own race, and the people that are going to come with will, and you'll pull some people in that process. And so I'm just like, I need to talk to a ton of people. Recruiting is going to be the single greatest thing to launch your business. I'll do 3-way calls for anybody. If you have any prospect that wants that look, If it's more of a video thing, there are so many videos you could share. You could talk to them about it. But to do nothing is not to move forward, is to tread water or sink. So it's better to share it with them. It's like the philosophy that says done is better than perfect. That's it. I'd rather have something than nothing, and done is better than perfect. So it's, to me, I'm like, we're all just figuring it out right now. But if we talk to enough people, it'll start to come together. And I think, to me, the most illuminating thing, and I'll end with this, the most illuminating thing that I've gotten so far out of this trip and this like voracious recruiting effort is the question that says, hey, by chance, would you know any of those people online that are like influencers and have a lot of like subscribers, or like strong circles of influence, or know like a ton of people? Do you know anybody like that? Everybody says yes, even if they don't. And then they want to know why. And then you'd be like, Mike, and I don't know if you picked this up on our call, but I always say my friend, my buddy, somebody else that's not me. If I make it about me, then they judge me. I don't know why they judge me, but they do. And then it's not the same. But if it's my successful friend, if it's someone that I know outside of me that is doing it and they are looking for some people, it hits so much stronger. And I don't know why that is. It just does. So I would challenge y'all this week, if you have the opportunity, to open your mouth, open your heart, share this, share hope, share the product, because you lose no flame of your own by lighting another candle. But that might make all the difference for them. And you would never have known if you didn't open your mouth. So if you could get out of your fear, doubt your doubts, doubt your fears, and put the doubling down on the income producing activity of recruiting, and make a short list and send out some texts, make a short list and send a video, make a short list and see about some customers. I made a video on my social media where I was talking into the camera while I was driving, basically trying to get somebody to buy greens. I got 4 customers with that video. I gave 4 coupon codes and I had 4 sales with that video. And I'm like, man, I guess I got to make it more personal. But it's getting easier. It's getting more simple. And I would challenge every one of you this week to have some of those conversations, because you lose nothing by having those conversations, but it could make all the difference. And chances are, by you taking an interest in someone else, you'll make their day. You'll make their life a little bit better, and you'll make a connection. You literally lose nothing. It's all gain. There's no loss there. And they're never rejecting you. That's just them making an opinion before they know all the decisions. And that's small-minded. And what do they say? The lowest form of whatever is I forget what it is acting like you know something when you don't know anything. I forget how that one goes. The highest form of ignorance is to speak on something you know nothing about. That was the quote. But I appreciate you guys being on tonight's call. This is going to be a powerful week. I'm in a bunch of states this week, and I'm never going to see these people again, and I'm going nuts on these greens. People need this. People need this. And as I say once, and I'll say again, in a world where they want you dumb and dependent, diseased and sick, it's such a form of rebellion to bless people's lives by bringing the health and doing something like this. So thank you guys for being on tonight's call. I really appreciate it. And hope you guys have a really productive week.